When we begin to examine phenylalanine more closely, it becomes clear that we're not merely talking about nutrition in the narrow sense, we're talking about the very architecture of your mental life. Phenylalanine is a precursor to dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, and those are not trivial substances. They are deeply intertwined with your capacity to aim, to strive, to find meaning in effort. Dopamine, in particular, is what propels you forward. It's the chemical that reinforces the idea that what you are doing matters. So, when your diet is deficient in something as fundamental as phenylalanine, you're not just a little low on energy, you may find yourself subtly disengaged from your own ambitions. And that's where things become dangerous, though not in an obvious, dramatic sense. It's not that everything collapses overnight. It's that your edge dulls. Your thoughts become less precise, your motivation less reliable, your emotional responses less stable. You might interpret that as laziness or lack of discipline, but in many cases, it's physiological. Your brain simply doesn't have the raw materials it needs to function optimally. That realization should shift how you think about food entirely. Eating is not just maintenance, it's participation in the construction of your own consciousness. Now, consider the alternative. When you consistently supply your body with the nutrients it requires, including phenylalanine, you're effectively stabilizing the very systems that allow you to pursue complex goals. Your focus sharpens. Your resilience increases. You're better equipped to handle stress, not because life becomes easier, but because your internal machinery is more robust. And that creates a feedback loop. Better function leads to better decisions, and better decisions lead to a better life. So, the question becomes less about whether diet matters and more about whether you're willing to take responsibility for something so fundamental. Because every meal is a choice, and every choice is, in some sense, a vote for the kind of mind you want to inhabit. And if you ignore that, if you treat nutrition as an afterthought, then you risk undermining yourself at the most basic level long before willpower ever has a chance to intervene. If you take this idea seriously, that what you consume directly influences how you think and act, then the next logical step is to translate it into something practical. Because insight, on its own, is insufficient. It has to be embodied. And this is where phenylalanine-rich foods become more than a biochemical detail, they become tools. Eggs, dairy, seeds, legumes, meat, these are not abstract nutritional concepts. They are accessible, concrete choices that sit in your kitchen, waiting to either support you or be ignored. Now, people often assume that performance, whether intellectual, emotional, or even moral, is primarily a matter of willpower. But that's a shallow interpretation. Willpower is fragile, especially when it's unsupported. If your body is undernourished, if your brain lacks the necessary precursors to produce the neurotransmitters that regulate focus and motivation, then you are essentially trying to build a stable structure on an unstable foundation. You might manage for a while, but it's not sustainable. Eventually, something gives. So the real question is this: why make it harder than it needs to be? When you consistently choose nutrient-dense foods, you're not just feeding yourself, you're reducing unnecessary resistance. You're aligning your biology with your intentions. And that alignment is powerful, because it means that the effort you exert is actually effective. You're no longer fighting against your own physiology, you're working with it. There's also something deeper here, something almost philosophical. Discipline is often framed as deprivation, as the act of saying no. But in this context, it's more accurately understood as the act of choosing what is beneficial over what is merely convenient. And that requires a shift in perspective. You begin to see food not as entertainment or impulse, but as strategy. Each decision carries weight, not because it's morally loaded, but because it accumulates. Over time, those small, seemingly insignificant choices shape your capacity to think clearly, act decisively, and remain resilient under pressure. And once you understand that, once you genuinely grasp that your daily habits are either reinforcing or undermining your potential, it becomes very difficult to justify neglect. Because the cost is no longer abstract, it's personal. So you might ask yourself, the next time you're faced with a choice, am I selecting what is easy, or what is effective? Because in the end, your life is, to a large extent, the sum of those decisions, and whether you like it or not, they are shaping who you become. There's an important nuance here that cannot be ignored, and it speaks to a broader principle that extends far beyond nutrition. While phenylalanine is essential for most people, indeed, beneficial in the ways we've discussed, there exists a condition known as phenylketonuria, or PKU, where the body cannot properly metabolize this amino acid. And for those individuals, what is ordinarily helpful becomes harmful, even dangerous, if not carefully managed. Now, that's not just a medical footnote. It's a powerful reminder that context matters. We have a tendency, especially in the modern world, to search for universal solutions, simple rules that apply to everyone, all the time. Eat this, avoid that, follow this plan. But biology doesn't operate on slogans. It operates on specificity. What your body needs, how it responds, what it tolerates, these are deeply individual variables. And ignoring that complexity can lead you astray, even when your intentions are good. So, the lesson here is not merely be cautious, but rather, be informed. Because true health is not achieved through blind adherence, it's achieved through understanding. You have to know when something is beneficial, why it is beneficial, and crucially, whether it applies to you. That requires a certain level of responsibility. It means paying attention, asking questions, and being willing to adjust your behavior when new information presents itself. And there's something almost philosophical embedded in that idea. It suggests that living well is not about rigidly following rules, but about developing the capacity to navigate complexity with clarity. You're not just consuming food, you're making decisions within a system that is intricate, dynamic, and uniquely yours. And that demands humility, because it forces you to accept that what works for one person may not work for another. But it also offers a kind of empowerment. Because when you take the time to understand your own needs, you move from being a passive participant in your health to an active one. You stop guessing, and you start acting with precision. And that's the real takeaway: wisdom in nutrition, like wisdom in life, is not found in extremes, it's found in awareness. Because the difference between harm and benefit is often not the substance itself, but whether you understand how it truly applies to you.